the instincts of a curse against the so-called dignity obtained by human reason. It's a battle to determine who will be left standing in 100 years. With each chapter that passes of this current arc, I have become more and more thankful that Yuji was able to completely defeat Mahito and put him down for good. In this video, I want to go over Mahito's character and exactly why he was just such a huge threat. I made a video on this before, but honestly, it's just not that good. It was made during the earlier stages of this channel, and as we've gotten a lot more introspection into Sukuna's character, and I've seen the reincarnation of his original body enter the battlefield, what better time than now do we have to talk about the modern day Sukuna himself, Mahito. Mahito and Sukuna hold many similarities, both being monsters that are human by technicality, living their lives on no more than a whim, doing whatever they want whenever they feel like it. These two human monsters, possessing abilities that are designed to easily brutalize and tear apart their opponents, and evolve these techniques when the opportunity seems most fit, just seem to be way more similar than most realize. But of course, that's not all. First and foremost, the elephant in the room is the growth rate of Mahito and how dangerously close he was to truly reaching the heights of the strongest. When we first meet Mahito, he fights against Nanami. His abilities were very limited here, and at this time, due to being a child curse, he has no domain expansion for use yet. And still, he was able to fight against Nanami, a grade 1 sorcerer who should have no problem dealing with special grade curses. Nanami also points out that Mahito and Gojo are similar in terms of their personality traits. One day after this, in their rematch alongside Yuji, he's able to master the domain expansion. And at this point, he guarantees his victory against both Nanami and Yuji, but only really loses due to the inclusion of Sukuna. Mahito has a very scary growth rate in battle, as he is the human curse. Humans are known for being able to change and adapt to most situations when required. A requirement for this change and adaptability can be near-death experiences, and Mahito seems to face them in almost every fight he has. An example of this high aptitude being a very powerful trait to have as a sorcerer is in the battle of Gojo vs Sukuna. Gojo had to use his aptitude to experiment with his own domain in order to study and eventually contend with Sukuna's divine domain, whereas Sukuna had to use his aptitude in order to study the limitless and to develop a cleave that would be able to bypass the barrier that it has. Next time we see Mahito fight, he's able to circumnavigate many of the counters and plans that Ultimate Mechamaru had prepared against him on the spot, using nothing but creativity, and using this same creativity and battle IQ to use his idle transfiguration to allow him to maneuver the entire battlefield with maximum efficiency. Mahito's flexibility in the use of idle transfiguration is wild and vastly underestimated. I believe we see this flexibility at his peak against Yuji when they have their rematch. Mahito's aware that Yuji's strongest suit is hand-to-hand combat, and although he can somewhat contend with Yuji in this area, he uses his idle transfiguration to maximize a hit and run strategy, shooting a body repel against Yuji so Yuji can catch it and leave himself defenseless, only to find out that he simultaneously used this attack as transportation to quickly punch Yuji in the face, meanwhile transmuting armor onto his hand in order to reinforce his punches. If he were fighting anybody but Yuji, he wouldn't have punched, but instead, he could have just easily touched his opponent there and one-shot them. Mahito at this point was way too flexible and powerful, and he could really only be defeated by Yuji or somebody with overwhelming speed and power combined in comparison to him. I believe that the best display of idle transfiguration is through Kenjaku though, as Kenjaku uses it to transmute all of Japan from where he was at in order to begin the Culling game. Mahito may have been able to do this as well, as the ability does not increase or decrease in strength once obtaining it through cursed spirit manipulation. And if you think that's anywhere close to the ceiling of Mahito's potential, then man, your mind is about to be blown. When fighting against Gojo alongside Choso and the disaster curses, Mahito witnesses the 0.2 domain expansion, and he is able to figure out that it will be a solution for fighting against Yuji when he has any allies, simultaneously getting rid of the inclusion of Sukuna, again showing his battle IQ and adaptability as a sorcerer. Mahito being able to see such a complex ability and instantly find a way to copy and replicate it to these specific circumstances implies that he's likely able to do this with majority, if not all, of basic Jujutsu fundamentals and techniques. If Mahito were to witness the battle of Gojo and Sukuna, he'd likely have been able to pick up everything they did in that battle and applied it. Most scary of all, the use of ritualistic enchantments. In chapter 238, Sukuna reverts himself to his original form, and is then explained to the reader that due to his multiple limbs and mouths, he's able to perform ritualistic enchantments using these in battle, massively enhancing his attacks with no cost. This being referred to as an immense advantage over other sorcerers. We really had the potential to see Mahito mutate himself into an 8-armed, 4-mouthed monster if he had become powerful enough to do so at some point. But if you remember, Mahito did mutate himself into a much more powerful being when Yuji had pushed him to near death in their last battle, and all of his attacks were stated by Gege himself to have been increased by 200% in this form. Another similarity that they share, Mahito and Sukuna, which is probably the most important, is their mindset as living beings. When Kashimo asks Sukuna if he's truly satisfied with himself, why did he choose to divide his soul and transcend time as a cursed object? He tells Kashimo that pursuing satisfaction through love and attempting to find someone to connect to is essentially worthless, saying that he's never needed anybody to satisfy him. He eats when he eats, he plays with whatever amuses him, and kills all who stands in his way. He lives as befits his nature, and if nobody can understand that, then that's their problem. Mahito goes through his life with this same mindset, proclaiming to Yuji that I kill without a second thought, just like how you save people without a second thought. The instincts of a curse against the so-called dignity obtained by human reason, he does not think about the extra, meaningless things that Jogo does, but simply lives according to his own whims. Even when Mahito activates his 0.2 domain and tells Sukuna that he'll be killing Yuji here and now to just shut up and watch, Sukuna simply nods back with a smirk. Although this can be interpreted in many ways, he had just lectured Jogo about living as a curse, and seeing Mahito do this same thing and find a way to access his domain expansion while working around Sukuna that's a roadblock displays exactly what Sukuna was talking about when he defeated Jogo. Mahito having access to this mindset of doing whatever he wants as a curse, following his instincts, has his mind dead set on killing Yuji here and now, and this mindset has forced him to step up his creativity and ingenuity as a sorcerer. Mahito truly was the only other character than Sukuna in this series to just live on a whim and follow his true nature. Nothing more, nothing less. And it's truly scary how similar they are because of this. Speaking of his creativity, he even shares the same sense of cunning and trickery that Sukuna does. The way that Mahito had initially fought Nobara for the sake of only breaking Yuji mentally by bringing him her dead body, and thus did so, is reminiscent of how Sukuna fought and had Mahoraga as the primary attacker against Gojo, only to fool him into believing that Sukuna was going to rely on Mahoraga to deal the finishing blow in their battle, letting his guard down and essentially getting cut in half the moment that he eradicated Mahoraga. It's important to point this out because Reggie Star once said that a sorcerer is no more than a con artist, right? And as we go through a lot of the series, results are usually determined by a technique or a strategy finally catching an opponent off guard, rather than pure strength contest. In battle, Mahito and Sukuna will play an underdog role for a long-term result, and this will always give them the opportunity to study and grow as sorcerers. As a foil to Yuji Itadori, it seems as if Mahito served to be a placeholder for Sukuna and to introduce some of the philosophy and mindset that Sukuna represents without fully manifesting Sukuna in the flesh for obvious reasons. With that being said, I believe that Mahito's strength being displayed could have also been a placeholder for Sukuna himself, as it could have been to display the power that Sukuna may have had when he first started battling or when he was born. As the story goes on, Sukuna seems to represent the full potential of Mahito more and more, and as we've come to learn more about Sukuna in the story, it has only enriched the dynamic between both Mahito and Sukuna. Sukuna sharing a laugh with Mahito, which shows that he at least found him interesting. Sukuna threatening to kill Mahito whenever he touches his soul is completely in line with what he expressed to Kashimo, having fun with people that interest him, but of course killing them if he finds them standing in his way to be more troublesome than continuing to play with them. Mahito choosing to prioritize killing off Yuji rather than reviving Sukuna after they managed to seal Gojo, displaying Mahito's willingness to simply follow his desires as a curse rather than the grand optimal plan or scheme. Mahito and Sukuna just do whatever they want, and sometimes they run into each other and butt heads when doing so, and it's pretty cool. As similar as they are, it is interesting that Sukuna has never really mentioned it, but even that makes sense, as they wouldn't care to point out their similarities in the first place. A key difference between the two that I'm sure Gege has done intentionally was what they said to their respective rivals when they defeated them for the first time. When Sukuna defeats Gojo, he states that Gojo was magnificent and he will never forget them as long as he lives. Whereas Mahito tells Yuji upon seemingly defeating him that I'm sure that I'll eventually forget about you too. I want to say that this is more than likely an indirect communication of their wisdom along the current points of their journey. Whereas Mahito is still a child curse, understanding who he is more and more, Sukuna has been alive for centuries. Mahito was born putting his life on the line at every moment, whereas Sukuna has been way past this and hasn't had to do this in a very long time. So with Gojo pushing him to the brink, he was much more appreciative of Gojo than Mahito was for Yuji. I'll say this for the 1000th time, Mahito and Sukuna's dynamic has only gotten better as we've learned more about Sukuna's philosophy and character. Mahito having all this potential to eventually stand with the strongest truly made him scary, and the quality of his character and role has only increased as we've learned more about the story and other characters. To me, this is very telling of Gege's competence as a writer, and the story isn't even over yet. But hey, maybe we'll see him return in the form of the merger as a reincarnation, a curse created primarily from the Culling game. A battleground full of human death should result in something similar to the curse born from human malice, right? Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, but most of all, thank you so much for watching. I always appreciate it. I really do. Again, have a great day, guys, and of course, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.